What's going on, guys? I wrote you guys a poem.
Wait, are we starting?
I think we're ready to go. You guys ready?
Yeah.
You guys ready to do
Sure.
this? So I should probably admit that when we were offered the opportunity to come out here and do a panel at the Festival of Halos, I was a little bit apprehensive. I knew we would have just released our 20th anniversary Vidoc, said goodbye to Halo in our own way, kind of a Bungie way. I knew we were in a transition phase with Halo and kind of moving on to the next thing. And quite frankly, I thought maybe we were wearing out our welcome with you guys. But seeing you guys pack in here like this and come out and cheer for us and get excited about Halo is pretty cool. So I think...
Thanks, everybody.
So...
Just a quick announcement. There are still Grunt plushies available for purchase in the store.
I think that calls for a grunt voice.
Yeah, well, you know...
Limit of 3. You can only buy 3.
Very nice,
But they're
very
actually
nice.
very cute. And you know, it's taken 10 years to get a Grunt plushie. That's amazing.
We
10
came up
long
with the idea
years.
A long time ago.
Jason Sussman had like 10 of them last
Except we
night, and
wanted
you wouldn't
the
give them
little-
up.
What'd you say?
Sussman had like 10 of them last night, and you wouldn't
Yeah,
give them
I know.
up.
I know.
We're totally off the rails already.
Except I think the original Grunt plushie that you pitched was me with a string coming out of my... that
So
you
that-
could
Do-
pull
do that
anytime you
voice.
wanted
Anytime.
and get me to do like write
kick,
words faster.
Very nice.
Yes.
Wow, all right.
Yeah, so
That's
thanks for
version 2.0.
so thanks for coming out, guys. We really appreciate it. We want to thank 343 for putting this together, for buying Marty drink tickets last night, and for being wise enough to stop at 2. So this should be a pretty cool panel. We've got 4 guys here that were there at the beginning of Halo. These guys were working on Halo before it had a name.
Yep.
These guys were working on Halo before it had a hero, before it had a single fan. So it's really cool to see all the fanfare wrapped around it, experience Halo Fest, see all you guys come out and celebrate and play and have fun and come together. And so that's kind of what I wanted this panel to be about, is about the creation of Halo. This is probably the only panel at PAX, I think, where we can put 4 guys out here that worked on the original and that were there at the very beginning. So that's kind of where I want to start, and that's kind of how I want to set this up. So.
Yeah, and for us, this panel is also a way just to say, hey, thanks for being fans for the last 10 years.
Yes. Yep.
We do it all for you guys,
Yeah.
and thanks so much for coming.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So I don't think these guys really need a formal introduction. If you've played Halo, if you've kind of marveled at the skyboxes or been entranced by the music, if you've been captivated by the characters and the stories and the worlds of Halo, then you guys are already well met. But it's in Marty's contract. We have to do formal announcements, so we're going to give them each 30 seconds and just kind of go right down the line here. So Chris, why don't you?
Hey,
spiel.
I'm Chris Butcher. I'm one of the engineers at Bungie. I've been with Bungie for 11 years. I started working on Oni.
When he
right-
was 11, he started.
Yeah, right. Thanks for that. Yeah, so I did AI for Halo 1, and then on Halo 2, I did the online multiplayer networking, and then kind of since then, I've been working on Bungie's new project. So,
Hey, Chris, how many people worked on AI for Halo 1?
well, it was 2. It was Conrad, and then I think
Conrad, come on.
I think Conrad did some pretty sweet stuff on the whiteboard, and that was cool. And then after Conrad left, I took over.
Yeah.
That's 1, basically. Sweet.
Who the hell are you?
So you didn't do
Yeah.
actually anything important on Halo, so.
Yeah. Oh.
Wow, it's starting early. On
Ladies and gentlemen, Martin O'Dougall.
All I mean is actually Chris to do AI on Halo 1 and multiplayer networking on Halo 2. That's pretty much the nugget of everything that makes Halo Halo. Thank you, Chris.
You know, Pete Parsons has a saying that after Jason Jones, the person at Bungie that has the single biggest impact on any of our games is probably Marty, and he knows it, and that's what makes it so insufferable.
And by impact, we mean
But enough about me.
schedules,
Let's
right?
talk about Marty.
Yeah, there we go. All right, so I'm Marty O'Donnell. I'm the audio director and composer at Bungie, and it's been my privilege. Thank you. Thank you.
Wait, who
Tim
loves
is
Marty
here.
more?
Tim
All right, fair enough.
we got some great
Marty
voiceover
does.
people in the audience today too. We got 343 Guilty Spark right here, Tim. Steve Downs, Master Chief. Where is he? He's back there standing.
Steve.
I wonder if is Pete Stacker here? All right, Pete Stacker, Captain Keys is here someplace, Sergeant Stacker. Anyway, yeah, I love working with these guys because story, art, programming, I get to just sort of be the frosting on the cake, and it's been a total thrill for many years now. I started with Bungie in 1996.
You're old.
Yes, I am old. And
Longest
so anyway,
intro ever.
Here we go. Here's Joe.
You know, the funniest thing about that Vidoc that we released a couple weeks ago was all the phases of Marty. There was fat Marty, there was skinny Marty, there was
Not nice.
tan Marty, there was pale Marty.
There was
Mullet Marty.
The years have been rough.
It's true.
Hey, everybody, I'm Joseph Staten. I do some writing. I do some grunt voice. I'm the thorn in Marty's side and the twinkle in his eye.
Yes.
But I'm a design director at Bungie, and that's about it. Who the hell is this cop guy over here?
Yeah.
Hey.
Dirty cop.
Dirty cop, yeah.
Hi everyone, my name's Dave Dunn. I've been at Bungie for almost 15 years now. I'm the head of the art department. On Halo, I was an environment artist. On Halo 2 and 3 as well, transitioned to managing the art department. But you guys probably know me best as the voice of the scared crewman for Halo 1.
Halo
Voice
1.
of Scared Crewman.
Scared Crewman.
Yeah. Remember your
Help
line?
me, help you!
That's it.
Now, Dave, you made a little multiplayer map for Halo 1, I believe.
I did, yes, and it's great to see Mac's crew give it some awesome, loving treatment. It looks great, but at the end of
There's
Halo,
Max in the back right there.
at the end
Damnation,
of the
by
Halo
the way.
development process, Michael Evans and I were talking, and I was like, I really want to make a map because I'd been working on the campaign stuff the whole time, and I had this crazy idea for a really small capture the flag map that you guys might know as Damnation.
Damnation. I hear it's a lot more fun now that Max had some time to improve it.
Yeah, I heard some people are happy that maybe those jumps are gone and not so difficult. But I wanted
jumps.
to challenge you guys to think about where you were running around.
That was good.
Because when you look down, you could see your feet. Oh, no, that's
Yeah,
right.
that's
You
good.
couldn't see your feet. Yeah.
No, now.
And I really love the gardens and wanted to make sure that they had a lot of action in that map.
It's good.
So I'm Eric. I'm Bungie's community manager. Yay! This guy is freaking out down here. So when I was putting the panel together, I went to HBO. Switch mics. This one.
Mike fail.
I'm glad we have professional voice actors
Check,
to help
check,
us with our
check.
mic.
Check.
There we go. Testes. 1, 2, 3. Sorry. All right. So a lot of these questions are going to come from HBO, but the first one is mine. So when I first came across Halo, it wasn't really the multiplayer that grabbed me. It wasn't the music. It was the storytelling. And so, Joe, you said something.
Me too.
You said something interesting. At least one interesting thing in the Vidoc. You said everyone at Bungie are storytellers. So that we're all storytellers and we're all tasked with telling the stories. What does that mean in Halo, both from a theoretical level, like what does it just, and then what does it mean in practice?
Well, let's go with practice first, because that's much more fun to talk about. I mean, I think there was a time in Bungie's history where we weren't all storytellers. I think there was a big disagreement in Halo 1 about how important story really was. I mean, I think there are lots of people who thought we didn't need a game with a story in it. We just need to ship a fun game, and the story was kind of a pain in the ass, actually. And why are we spending so much time on it? And I'm looking at you, Marty. No, not really. But I think over the years we've all realized the importance of not just telling a story, but creating a real living world. And whether you're an environment artist or an engineer or whoever you are, I mean, you all have a part to play in creating this larger story of the game. So I think everybody feels that responsibility now. And you can look at our progression of Halo games and, ODST, Reach. I think the stories are much better in those better told at least than even in Halo 1. So I think, it's really great. I mean, especially looking to the future. I mean, I think everybody's going to be a part of the next big one. So it's great.
Sweet. So I think one of the elements of storytelling that often gets overlooked in games, and with a lot of notable exceptions, is the way stories unfolded through the art. So were you guys looking to actively put a lot of story, like say in the Forerunner architecture, or how were you guys looking? So you said it was a pretty simple story. How were you guys looking to infuse story just in the world itself?
Well, I'll let Dave maybe take that one. I mean, especially for Halo 1, I think the answer
anybody
is sort of different for every Halo game, but
Yeah. So I think that's an accurate statement that everybody thinks about story. Maybe not in the sense of the story arc, but backstory to every little thing that you do. And if you're not thinking about the function of the work that you're creating, whether it be the Warthog or one of the Foreigner spaces, then it's gonna. I think the player is gonna see right through that there's nothing behind it. So I'll talk about the environment arc because that's what is the easiest thing for me to speak about. I think the first thing you can look at is what story were we trying to tell? We were trying to convince you, all the people, all the players, that this universe was real, that there was something there, and I think the easiest thing to point to is probably, and I'm looking right here on the screen, is just that ring going up in the sky. And as soon as Marcus had put that in, you started to believe, oh yeah, I'm on this this ring world, and so then another thing that we were trying to react to at that time was a lot of the first-person shooters were still corridor, and your suspension of disbelief was kind of challenged a little bit that those are real spaces. So I remember when we were doing the Pillar of Autumn, and we're Paul Russell taking just that little bit of extra care to put the window there and then wrap the exterior of the ship around just enough so that you believed you were on a ship. And we did that with, I think we tried to do that with all the environments. We tried to make you feel like, hey, there's more here than you can actually go to, and maybe you the player would run into the soft ceilings and all that. But we tried to do it in a way that felt pretty good, like some fogging and just trying to make these vistas. And so I think skies became really, really important to us.
yeah, I mean, at Bungie, we have what we call storytelling channels, and it's a big, long list of things from music as one of them to dialogue, of course, text that we see. But the number one thing at the very top of the list, the biggest impact storytelling channel are our environments. I mean, they don't say anything usually. I mean, they have ambient sound, but the biggest impact on our story is absolutely the world that we're creating.
Yeah, I mean, and at different points, you want to make, as the story arc says, okay, now we're ramping up in intensity. You also want to do that through gameplay, and I think that's maybe Chris can jump in and talk about how the AI handles stuff like that, because I think that's a story part as well.
When the story arc at the end of Halo 2 said we're going to go back to Earth and we're going to fight there for a while and it's all going to be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that story.
But that environment that I described was really, really hard to build.
Yes.
That environment was called Halo 3 that we tried to build.
A lot of people wanted to know what the ending of Halo 2 was. So
I mean,
I
Halo
have
2 was Halo 3.
That's not actually true, Joe, and you know it.
Well,
I have the
bits and
original
pieces.
ending of Halo 2, and it's stored away, never to be seen or heard by anybody.
But a lot of that dialogue ended up in Halo 3.
Yeah, but it was changed enough. You know how much it was changed.
Such
Oh,
a
why
tease.
must we
It's
fight
a fun.
publicly,
I know.
always?
Because it's part of our deal.
All right. Let's let Chris speak.
yeah, Chris, you've been pretty quiet over here. So how does engineering wrap into all this? Are you kind of the unsung heroes? Like what's going on? What do you guys do for story, and how do you help these guys make games?
Well, I always think the most interesting stories are the ones that players tell in the world. And my first experience of Halo was I was working on Oni, and I got to Bungie, and so Dave Dunn was working on Oni as well, and I was like,
In
Dave.
fact, all four of us worked on Oni, and then we worked on Halo, which is pretty cool, because Oni was a lot of fun.
Well, the Oni team is the heart of Bungie. We
Yes, absolutely.
We kind of carry those guys. I mean, but so when I first got to Bungie, I went to Dave Dunn. Actually, I was like, Dave, I know you must have a build of Halo lying around, because I was a big Halo fan. The first time I saw it was with the Macworld presentation, like I was telling Claude and Miguel a little earlier. And so I asked Dave, hey, do you have a build? Can you fire it up? And so he got this build, and it was back before the Xbox. This is a PC build, so it's just some rolling terrain. And the first thing I did was I got in my little guy, and I ran around, and I found a river. And I went down. There's reeds by the river that are swaying back and forth. I kind of kicked some rocks in the river and watched the rocks fall down the hill, then sink slowly in the water. And I was just sitting there thinking to myself and saying, this is a world. These engine systems that everybody had built before I got there, they're creating this world that players are going to be able to be in and spend time in. And so my favorite stories in Halo are always the quiet ones. You know, I think about Halo Reach has some of my favorite stories in the human environments in the first couple of levels of the game, where you're going through these kivas of the pioneers who are there on Reach, and they've created this world for themselves. And so you can look at the world of these people and their homes, and you can look at the windmills that are turning slowly in the background. You can sit there and just soak up the ambience. And for me, that story emerges from all those little details that make up the world. And you know, with Reach, we've been pretty deliberate with a lot of that stuff. We had people taking a long time to talk about the pioneers and what's their philosophy, this group of people that are settling the wilds of Reach, and how do they think about the world? How does their architecture reinforce the way they think about the world? We haven't always been so deliberate. On Halo 2 and Halo 3, there was this pretty fun game where the environment artists would always try and sneak like signs into the environment. They'd be like, "This building operated by Clown Industries," you know, and then Harold would...
Clune.
Not from Microsoft GOP's perspective, it ain't.
No, it wasn't.
No, Microsoft is not a big fan of the environment artists trying to sneak in like pictures of themselves doing crazy things.
So you talked about being deliberate, and a lot of people cite Halo as kind of a lightning in the bottle experience, or kind of a assemblage of happy accidents. How much of that is true? How much merit is there to the idea that it was just Marcus throwing the ring in there, and it was all fairly accidental? And
Well, what I would say to that is just that we were all working on this game, when it was an RTS, and it was just had sort of a sci-fi skin to it. And there was no Halo, there was no Master Chief. None of this stuff existed. As a matter of fact, it wasn't called Halo, obviously, at the beginning. So it's really fun to see how those things, came into being and developed. The best happy accidents that I believe happened, and that also helped to tell the story and make the world feel alive, is when Chris worked hard on the artificial intelligence, and we had the Marines and the grunts running around doing all sorts of stuff, but we didn't really have the voices hooked up, and things were not necessarily working. And I remember finally when things just sort of gelled for me was I was playing on some level, I can't remember what, but I was trying to snipe across something, and I heard Sergeant Johnson behind me. He said, "Hey, get out of my way." And I looked, and then he goes, "Move your ass." And I'm like, that's just great, because we didn't make that happen. It happened because of Chris's AI and randomly selected dialogue, and I really felt like he was a real person talking to me and telling me to move. And I was like, sorry, Sergeant Johnson, I'll move out of the way. It was great.
Chris, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, I'm not a programmer, but I think the code said, if player horrible at sniping, then NPC tell him get the hell out of the way, right?
That was some custom scripting.
There's actually special Marty detection code in there. No, but Marty's right. I think the thing that's interesting to me about the story of Halo is that a lot of the world building of there's this ring world and the society and the structure of the Covenant and all of that was around for a very long time before we actually had the game altogether. So that kind of backstory was pretty deliberate from a pretty early time. And obviously, when you actually go to look at the story of what the levels are and what the cinematic script is, that came in pretty late. But the two happy accidents for me are both point to that Halo originally was a science fiction game about big ideas, about the idea of the ring world, about the idea of the Covenant and the idea of the Forerunners. But the accidents that we came to were the Halo ultimately was a story about characters. I mean, the Master Chief, Cortana, Captain Keyes, and the Marines, all of these are really late additions to the story of Halo. I think the relationship between Master Chief and Cortana didn't emerge until we started saying, well, this is a first-person shooter, and so we need to have a way where you are going to be guided around. So what if there's an AI that's riding around inside your suit with you? And this is all before we had the idea that there was going to be a character called the Master Chief. At this time, the player character was just a totally faceless, voiceless guy. And so I think the interaction between Steve Downes and Jen Taylor and their specific voices and talents really brought out that relationship between the Master Chief and Cortana that was a very late addition to the canon of Halo.
By the way, I wish everybody, especially you guys up here, could have been at the panel yesterday, because Steve Downes, Master Chief, and Jen Taylor, Cortana, met for the first time. and that was fun. So it was a nice hug. It was a nice romantic moment, even though nothing can really actually happen.
So you talked about the rich backstory and the idea of the Covenant and the Forerunner. A lot of people ask about the like Halo Bible. Like, how much of that really exists? How much of that was really written down and well thought out? And
I think I gave Frankie a stack of phone book size things, and he has them hidden in a safe somewhere now.
just under lock and key.
Yeah. No, I mean, there never really was eventually we did have a Halo Bible, like real pieces of paper with stuff written on it, but for a long time, the Halo Bible was the people that worked at Bungie. I mean, everybody had their own knowledge of a really specific area, which was great because you had sort of, wise elders who knew a lot of things. But, well, I mean, some of them did, not all of them.
Wow,
Some just
you had to
elder.
go there.
But they laughed first. I got to respond to the laugh. But I mean, there was also a problem with that too, which is everybody had a certain piece of the pie, and they sometimes disagreed about what was what. And so as soon as we began to write novels and do comic books and do all that sort of stuff, I mean, absolutely we had to organize it into some some pages.
And we organized it so well, which is why canon is so perfect. I don't think you can poke holes in anything, right?
No, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I think that in 1998 when I arrived at Bungie, you guys had it all written out, and we just followed that for the next 10 years.
Absolutely.
It was real simple.
Yes.
My favorite memory of arguing about the story is arguing with Rob McLeese about how far outside the galaxy did the Ark have to be located so that it would be safe from the halo effect. And we were talking about how does the halo effect propagate off the mass shadow of other stars, and that's because it's like a self-sustaining chain reaction. And he just looked at me like, this is all and I'm like, no, Rob, like, go read Ender's Game and read about the way the MD device works as it propagates off the bugger homeworld, and then we should do something like that, but it should work on neurons. And he's like, you're crazy, get out of here. Mind you, this is coming from a man who wrote pages in the Halo Bible about the Nar and their coal-powered spaceships, so...
Yeah. Yeah. So
we should do a panel on that.
I don't know if I answered your question or not, but I mean, there did exist a real repository of all those good ideas in the end.
And it sounds like there's a lot of institutional knowledge and a lot of people that are kind of keepers of fiction or
Yep, absolutely.
Like, how do you bring that all together and get everybody unified towards making a game? Like,
Well, I mean, honestly, I mean, internally to the big team, we try to tell things very clearly and with as few words as possible. I mean, it's really easy to get lost in the weeds of stuff, and I think we try to be really crisp about the stuff that we're talking about when we're designing stuff. I mean, you can easily sort of overwhelm. I mean, an environment artist, right? At the end of the day, I mean, not to pick on the environment artist, but anybody. I mean, content creators just want to know. I mean, like, how big do you want it? What's the theme? Tell me a little bit, but I don't want to know about the Nar and their like stuff and like how the halo effect works. Just like, is it blue or is it green?
Yeah,
and do you want trees or not? Like snowy? Yeah, I got it. Like
The best example of that.
go back to your cave, Ryder. I'm
Yeah.
done.
The best example of that is people often talk about the style Bible, and we created the style Bible maybe during Halo 2 or Halo 3, and that was to actually help with external vendors do its stuff, because the internal style Bible was as simple as, hey, welcome to the team. You just joined. You're going to be an environment artist. Okay, you're working on this Covenant ship stuff over here. Here's what you need to know about Covenant. Try to make it curved if you have enough polygons, and make it purple. Oh, Forerunner, I want you to chamfer 45 degrees, gray with some blue lighting. Okay, go. And it worked. I mean, it was like, because it was crisp and simple, I think actually you didn't get a lot of straying, into wild tangents.
Yeah, I mean, it's really easy to overcook a story. I mean, we've done that a couple times, and I think we've learned that, I mean, over the years, that you got to boil it down to its simplest stuff sometimes, especially when you're making it. Yeah.
so
Usually Joe's first draft of a script is about 1,600 pages.
Oh, please.
12, 14 hours worth.
I'm just trying to make the first draft of my scripts the direct opposite of the first draft of your music, which is like one note.
right. Yeah. I was actually
And then
going
12
there.
months later, you're
Yeah.
like, oh, I'll get to it at some point. I'll do the rest at the end.
It works.
Yes. So you're known for the ivory tower, among other things. Like how do you fit into all this? How does the music inform storytelling? How does it? Where does it come into play? And how does it make the games better?
Well, I've talked about this before, and I try to convince these guys that this is a good way to work. They still don't believe me, but music I think usually works best when it comes in latest, and that's because it can actually respond to things that are working. So in a film, post-scoring is what happens. The film is cut, the production is done, and then the music, the composer comes in to actually try to bring the scene alive as much as possible emotionally. That's the way, because I have a film composition background, that's the way I like to do it with the game. But many of the guys on the team would like to hear a lot of music prior to that stage, because usually the game isn't working until about a couple weeks before we ship.
Doesn't that also
I'm
mean
overstating that.
Doesn't it also mean you're just kind of hanging out for?
Yeah, most of the time I'm drinking coffee.
We're tired of
looking to
watching
see
you
how
push
they-
the coffee mug around the office.
So,
but
some-
anyway, yeah. So I spent a lot of time working with the story guys, and actually the environments are really meaningful for me too. I remember, I think it was on Halo 2, where the whole time I would see early builds of the game, and as it progressed, there was one level, the level with all the little sentinels flying around. What was the name of that level?
That was the gas giant
When
No,
Halo
not the
2?
guest.
in Halo 2.
Alpha
Yeah,
Gas
that's it.
Giant?
Alpha Gas
Or-
Giant.
Oh, you mean the wall?
No, wait.
Oh, you're
wasteland
talking about
library.
the Sentinel Wall.
I never remember what we actually
Sentinel
called them
wall,
in the
yeah.
game.
Oh, Halo 2.
The one
Anyway.
with the little Sentinel constructors that we
What?
got.
The Oracle? Oh.
It was
Thank
called
God
Sounds
for our
totally wrong.
fans. You know, true story. I think the day that we decided to write down the story Bible is when we got into such a big argument about the timeline. We went, well, who knows when it happened? And we were like, oh, wait, we should go check HBO. And we looked at the HBO timeline, and we were
They
all
had it
so
all figured
embarrassed
out,
that they
yeah.
had it figured out better than we did that
Yeah.
we decided to write the story Bible. So thank you, guys.
So anyway, real quickly, on the Oracle, the whole time I was working on sound design and stuff for that level, and was thinking about music for it, it was a bright, beautiful, sunny day in the environment. And I didn't know, I think it was Chris Barrett's level, and he was planning on making it this stormy, dark, horrible place. And I was like, oh no, this is all bright, happy, sunny stuff.
You picked the build with no light maps? That was
I
good.
did, always. So, no, he didn't put it in, I think, especially the skybox didn't come in until late. And I'm like, Chris, you should have told me this was a dark. I wrote nice, happy, sunny music for this level, so. That's not really true, but I could.
Nice work.
So you've gone quiet again, Chris, so I'm going to ask you an engineering question. So Halo and Bungie specifically are both cited as sources of significant revolutions to console gaming, technical revolutions on consoles. Do you believe that's the case? And if so, like, where did Halo stray from the conventions, and why did you choose to do that?
Well, I mean, Halo's interesting because, I mean, you can certainly say, well, first-person shooters are known from an engineering perspective, right? And so they have existed before Halo and they exist after. I think the interesting stuff that we did in Halo is mostly about creating the world and making the world be more responsive to players. And so I would say that the things that I thought were most interesting to me about the first Halo was the way that your friendly NPC AI actually followed you around through the level. And that's something that hadn't really been seen before. I mean, there was a little bit in Daikatana. There were some sidekicks that would come with you that I think are cited for not being very good at pathfinding. Yes. But in Halo, we weren't really sure what role the Marines were going to play. I mean, as soon as we had an AI that could fight meaningfully, we decided to put friendly AI in there along with enemy AI, because from Oni, I had really enjoyed making the little TCTF troopers that would run around with you in there. So we decided that friendly AI was going to be pretty important because it was one way of making the player feel connected to humanity. I mean, for the parts of Halo where you're off by yourself, you're just the Master Chief and Cortana, or maybe you're just, for some of those levels, you're just the Master Chief and Cortana isn't with you. It's a very isolating kind of experience. And so we wanted to make sure that we grounded the player at the start of the game, particularly by making them feel as though they're really part of this larger story of these humans who have crashed on this ring world. And spoiler alert, nobody makes it out alive, of course. Except, magically, Sergeant Avery Johnson. How did he make it off the Halo?
So I'm
Joe?
just going to, Joe and I had arguments about this. I was convinced, especially once we hired really fun voice actors to voice the Marines, that people would get attached to Marines. And a lot of the guys just thought, like, no, there's cannon fodder. It doesn't really matter. Well, that's because a lot of our designers were playing before we had voices attached. And everybody fell in love with Sergeant Johnson. Everybody fell in love with Sergeant Stacker and the Aussie and all these different people. And I'm like, guys, everybody dies at the end of Halo. All these people you got to know and love are dead. I said, couldn't we at least in the last scene, after whatever somebody says, Dust and Echoes. Was that Cortana that says Dust and Echoes?
And your memory is just really fast.
Really good. They all blend together. But I wanted Sergeant Johnson then to just like come around the corner and like, no, Chief, I'm here, you know. But Joe is a completely
Steve Abeda, our wonderful animator, longtime animator, who's not with Bungie anymore. We actually talked about doing exactly that as an Easter egg in Halo 1, which is as there's that sort of long shot of the Master Chief bracing in the hallway.
Yeah.
On Legendary, we were going to put Johnson just for a moment bracing in the hallway too, but in a much more like, this isn't really difficult for me, I've got my cigar kind of pose. This Master Chief's like, ah! Johnson's just hanging out, but we kind of ran out of time to do that. But read the book.
We still put Johnson in with the elite at the end, though.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That was actually his twin brother, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah.
They were very close.
But yeah, so I mean, AI like that, I think, is one of the interesting things that we added to Halo that hadn't really been seen much before, and that was really a collaboration between design and engineering, because the designers, particularly Paul Bertone, who worked on what's the name? It's Assault in the Control Room. That's what it's called for you guys. I mean, we have all internal names, so it's B40. It's always going to be B40 for me. Yeah. But Assault in the Control Room. There are Marines that will start with you pretty early on in that game, and they'll follow you through the majority of that level. And there's a very elaborate interplay between the design systems and the engineering systems that gets them to follow you. And so there's a ton of debugging and work and that goes into that. But then that kind of, when you're actually playing the game, that all recedes into the background. The snow is falling, you're there, the Marines are with you, and they'll follow you for a significant distance all the way through there. And that happened at the very end of the game. We didn't really understand what its implications were. Like Marty and Joe are saying, it was too late for us to really change much about the story and have some way for the Marines to officially get off the ring with you.
Yeah, one of the funniest things I remember is when we finally got voices and we finally got the little health pips for the Marines when they were sort of sitting on your tank.
Yeah.
And just watching, I think it was Charlie or someone, like spending 5-10 minutes trying to get the exact right configuration of Marines on his tank to continue through that level. But that's the kind of stuff that started to happen in the last couple weeks of the game that weren't part of Halo for the first 2 years of its development. That was great.
Well, the first 5 years of its development.
First 5 years of its development.
Yeah. So that's one thing I think is really interesting. That's an interesting engineering system that contributes to the story. I think the other engineering systems that contribute to the story of Halo are the engineering systems that let the fans tell their story. And there are simple ones, like the ability for you to put your gun down so you're not aiming at your friends, so that the red versus blue guys can do their machinima a little bit better. We added
I think that was a bug originally, wasn't it?
No, it wasn't a bug.
Oh. There are no
It was
bugs.
a feature.
Yeah, there's like a controller combination you can do in both Halo 2 and Halo 3 that enables like the ability to put your gun down in multiplayer.
Well, I know, but wasn't the ability to like nod your head the bug?
Right. So in Halo 1, the aim screen for the pistol, what happens is as you look all the way down, the head then comes back up again. So if you point all the way down at the ground, it looks like you're aiming your gun down but looking at the other guy, and that is a bug with the animation content.
Which red versus blue guys absolutely loved, and we had to make it a feature then from then on.
Right, and so that kind of emerges from the dialogue with the community. And other engineering systems like that would be save films and screenshots, and the Forge in particular, right? The Forge is, as an engineering feature, it's complicated, and it's not really that obvious that it's something that you would want to add to a game like Halo. But the Forge for Halo 3 started out as Tyson and the other multiplayer designers saying, I really don't know if this is the right place for the battle rifle to be, so I want the ability to move it, because on Halo 2 it was really painful. They couldn't change where all the weapons are placed on the environment. So he built this system for Halo 3, and the stated design goal of that was let the designers move where the weapons are on the map. And of course you guys know what the Forge was actually used for, which was building just these crazy, elaborate multiplayer levels that were completely constructed from whole cloth by the fans.
A lot of Forge porn.
A lot of Forge porn. Thank you, Eric. And so these systems kind of emerge as a dialogue between what we do and what the community then does with these artifacts that we've created. And for me, that's the power of the engineering systems, is they give people the ability to express themselves. And that's what I love.
So you talked a little about the AI. Probably my favorite enemy combatant in any game is the grunt. And I think because there's a lot of, like, there's these really cool layers that happen. If you're shooting them, it feels good. It feels fun to kind of eradicate them. But then if they get you, like if they get you with a plasma grenade, you almost want to, like, cheer for them. You're almost rooting for them. Like, how do you design for that? Like, how does that work? Is it an engineering thing? Is this a design document? How does that come to fruition?
Well, the funny story I like to tell about the grunt is that they're kind of odd-looking little guys, right? Like they're short and they're squat and they've got a big backpack.
We had a model in the studio for that exact thing.
Yeah, but Joe's arms aren't quite as simian as the grunt's. It doesn't really have the big meaty forearms. Show us your forearms. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, whoa, damn. Anyway, but the whole reason the grunt is designed to look that way is so that his head will be at the right height for you to shoot it. Because Jones wanted a character whose head was the weak spot, that you wouldn't have to look up or down to shoot him, so it'd just be pop, 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 like killing popcorn. And so you kind of feel sorry for the guy. His physique is almost a joke, designed for the specific intention of being easy to shoot with a pistol. But from an AI standpoint, the reason the grunt is endearing, I think, is because he's cowardly. And so we spent all of this time, I had an elaborate system in there for measuring like different levels of fear and panic, and like the grunts would freak out when their buddies got shot and they run away. And if you actually just watch a group of grunts, no elites around them in Halo 1, if you guys are going to get Halo Anniversary, I know I am, then that's one of the things I plan on doing is tormenting these poor grunts. Like just a squad of 3 or 4 grunts with no elite and they're trying to shoot you, they really can't function as enemies at all. I mean, they'll pop out, take a few pot shots at you, you'll like turn to look at them and they'll run away because they get scared because they're not with their friends. And so you have to feel sorry for them. You know, they've been ripped from their food nipples and thrust into this world, and the demon is chasing them with an assault rifle. And
But at the same time, the grunts, you know, they're cowardly and they're weak and all these things, but every once in a while, one of them will show up with a fuel rod gun.
yes.
And then your feelings about them totally change. And they'll whip out 2 plasma grenades and rush you. So there's a really fun balance of sometimes you laugh at them, sometimes you feel sorry for them, and sometimes they're the most terrifying thing on the battlefield. As you're screaming to your buddies, you know, like in Firefight or something, like, where's that bastard with the fuel rod gun? Get him, get him, get him. And like killing the brutes is easy at that point, but the one guy with the fuel rod. So they're just a really nice, well-rounded character with a lot of
And that's
options.
another one of those things is we had these great characters that were cannon fodder, and the temporary voice we had for it, believe it or not, was one of the Marines that I just used because they had the same sort of categories of attack and flee and fear and all these categories. And we had done some work with one of the actresses who did a Marine voice. And so we just hooked up those same categories, except we pitched it up so he sounded just, you know, cartoony. And it was only just so we could differentiate, I don't want to hear the Marine, I want to make sure I'm hearing the grunt. And suddenly by pitching him up, we had a comedy relief element in the game that we weren't really planning.
Right, and then we said,
Joe
"That sounds
started
like
imitating him, and it sounded like Joe doing his imitation of this funny Marine pitched up voice. And that's, I believe, how we ended up having you come in. It's like, okay, Joe, now you got to do it for real. Be the real grunt.
Yeah.
And those sessions were great. They were amazing.
Yeah.
You're my favorite
one last grunt story. Oh, they want a grunt voice.
You know, with a grunt voice, it's a lot of fun.
But the funny thing about the grunt voice is I really don't
Do this when I'm in the studio.
That's just what it sounds like. But I go in the studio, I say, flee, leader dead, run away. And then Marty says, no, you got to say it lower, because if I pitch that up, it's going to be even worse. So I really just go into the studio and say, leader dead, run away. It's about the excitement and emphasis, not the...
Yeah, but
Right.
when you throw some of that stuff in, it's good. And
Every once in a while, I'll toss
we
it.
got the food nipple lines were just classic lines. So and they
So,
just
you
came
know,
out of
sometimes
his
the grunt,
head. I don't know
the
where it comes
grunt,
from.
they have real feelings. The war is hard. They feel for their comrades that fall. They're very deep.
My favorite grunt character is the heretic grunts in Halo 2, because I always imagine them like sitting around discussing socialist philosophy. Now that they've thrown off the yoke of the prophets.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Public ownership of property, much better way to go. You think?
So Dave, why are you dressed like a dirty cop?
Well, someone told me, you know, this whole big PAX thing is about cosplay, and I figured, you know, who gets more cosplay than a dirty cop, right?
You're kind of Lindy cop.
Yes, very linty. It was in my,
Dave was going to dress as Marty. I don't know what happened to that plan.
Yeah, I could not find the salt and pepper mullet wig, and I was really disappointed. So. Yeah.
Very nice, very nice.
Got some nice salt and pepper in the beard, though. Did you do that on purpose?
No,
or-
that's
oh.
just happening, by natural.
It's
Marty.
like we're all old.
Working with you we'll do that.
So you talked about Easter eggs a little bit when you were talking about Sergeant Johnson at the end of Halo 1. We get a lot of questions about Easter eggs. People kind of want to know what your favorites are, if you have a favorite, or even just why you put those into the game. Like why are they there, and what are they for?
I have a least favorite. I think you guys probably know which one that is. So we're working on ODST, and I wasn't really working very much on ODST. I helped out a little bit at the end, and one of our studio admins comes to me and is like, Chris, I need you to sign this release form because I need you to sign this. Harold says you have to sign this. I'm like, this says you can use my likeness in the game. Why is my likeness in this game? So we have, I think, Shakai and Steve Scott to blame for that one.
Now, if you guys don't know about this, when you're going down the drop pod at the beginning of ODST, and I think it's on all difficulties, someone should correct me if it's not, but if you kick the camera to the left inside your pod, you'll see a picture of your beautiful girlfriend. And your beautiful girlfriend looks a lot like Chris Butcher. Now, Dave can talk a little bit about this because we have epic Photoshop battles in email every day where we just make fun of each other. But the thing is, I mean, look at Chris Butcher. He is a handsome man.
No.
He is a good-looking man. You
Would you
wouldn't
put a
believe
wig
what
on
the
him?
face of a
Wow.
good-looking man looks like on the body of a good-looking woman.
And
It is amazing.
and poor. I think probably Steve Scott and CJ Cowan probably hammer that one home the most. Where like
Chris is a very good sport.
he is. But yeah, part of the culture. One of these days, I always I've threatened this for years now. I'm going to release the real Art of Halo book, and it has nothing to do with the stuff that you guys see in the games. We have these whiteboards that. The environment artists are pretty famous for drawing just stream of consciousness, whatever's happening in the studio at that time. You hear some story about somebody going to a restaurant, and then he starts talking about what he did that weekend, and all of a sudden there's some whiteboard that has some
It
horrible...
is not rated T for teen.
No, this one will not be rated T for teen. But then we've also, along the way, we started photoshopping people, heads on different... That's the easy, that's Photoshop entry level.
Yeah.
And then people just started to get better and better. I mean, because a lot of these artists, that's half their day is spent in knowing how to use Photoshop and stuff like that. So then it becomes it's mostly about the content, but some of the artistic value that happens in these things, you're like, that is absolutely believable. So then maybe about 3-4 years ago, I help sort of organize the pentathlon every year, and we started talking about we have
Pentathlon is a day where we all take a day off from work and play games against each other. We do that every year to remember why we do what we do.
Yeah, it's a celebration of remembering, hey, it's about games. And so people pick their favorite games that have been played a lot in the office that year, and we split into 4 teams, and we compete against each other, and all in the name of glory and honor and the cup.
But no Mario Kart.
Yes. Well, yeah, because there's always that, the blue shell. Everybody wants to debate. We can never get to agreement on the blue shell. And so we started to do this, and we started getting bigger and bigger, and we couldn't include all the games of pentathlon. It's 5, right? And so we had the idea of we'll encourage people to do side events. Now, they wouldn't count towards the scoring of the eventual winner. But, so then we were like, yeah, if you really this is about games and celebrating games. So if you're super, huge about Street Fighter, let's hook it up, let's get it going. So we'd have all these little side stations where you can go and you can play poker, or you can go and play Flip Cup, or whatever it is. And at one point, I just decided we should have a Photoshop-a-thon, right? And so what we do now is I come up with a theme. I don't tell anybody until that morning. The day kicks off. We come in, we have breakfast, and I send out an email, say, hey, everybody, welcome to the Photoshop-a-thon. This year's theme is brotherhood, and I give you source material, and I get some very good souls to offer up for me to take photos of them and give that to the studio, and then they just start, and at the very, very end of the day, the last thing we do at the end of the pentathlon, after we've declared a winner and all that, we sit down in the studio when we bring the screen down, and I show everybody pictures of of their coworkers being photoshopped in all sorts of wonderful, compromising acts and positions.
After you've spent an hour weeding out all the ones that are totally inappropriate for a company-wide meeting.
I sit there
Yes.
with Harold and HR, and we kind of go, no, that's just, no.
Yeah, Dave acts so mature at this point, especially since he's a more management guy. But I remember a few years ago when we were mostly male studio, and thankfully we have many more females working with us now. But a few years ago, it was mostly just guys, especially in the art department, and the whiteboards had started to get a little embarrassing. And
I've heard stories about
we were going to have like kids come through for Halloween, and we were going to have the wives coming in, and I went to Dave. I said, hey Dave, could you just talk to the guys and maybe just sort of clean up the boards a little bit? And he goes, okay, Marty, I'll give it a try. And sure enough, the next day they were all erased, and then new drawings started coming on, and all the new drawings were like environments and telephone poles and very interesting things. Except if you looked at them a certain way, you would realize. They were following the letter of the law, but oh my gosh, I swear it was worse than ever at that moment.
But it was brilliant. It really showed
stuff,
the true creativity of the artists. I mean, you'd be surprised. How do you make a little boy playing a drum kit?
All right, I'm
look
stop.
So Easter eggs.
Yeah, so that was a beautiful story, though.
I would say, off of Photoshop, one of my favorite Easter eggs is also an ODST, which Marty, in every game, I don't know if you know this, he hides a piece of music from Myth in every one of the games.
Siege of Madrigal, yeah.
Siege of Madrigal. And he's very secretive about it and swears Jay and C. Paul to secrecy about where it's going to be. Well, we on ODST found out where you hid it. And in that exact same special spot, we put a great image of you dancing to some sweet music and some flying hearts or some crazy madness. That is one of my favorite, because I wanted to be there on that night that you were testing Siege of Madrigal. Like, oh, it's going to be so good.
Well,
the fans will never find this. Then you found it, and all of a sudden, rather than your special music, you heard. I
don't think you were there with the day that I had. What happened was I was surprised that nobody had actually found Siege of Madrigal, and so I put a little contest out saying first person to find it, and give me proof that they found it.
Which everybody knew he would do.
And so I knew where it was. I had tested it on every difficulty except Legendary.
Because we knew Marty could never get to Legendary.
Come on. That is so not true. But so what happened was somebody sent me proof that they had found this thing, except that it was like, I'm like, that's not right. They must have done something. They must have done something. But it's like weird that they found it in the right spot. But it's this completely bizarre thing with hearts. And I was like, wait, hearts? That's Steve Scott. Those are temp effects that Steve uses to find out if things are not hooked up right. They're debugging hearts. And I thought, well, the kid couldn't have put those hearts in. That's Steve Scott. So I went and I had a tester. I said, look, can you confirm that this is really what happens in the game we ship?
Oh, you had a tester do it? Marty, come on.
Well, no, because
sniper rifle, infinite ammo, man up.
Anyway, as I was standing there and the tester had logged into the kid's account and was going to where the little film was and the whole thing, suddenly Steve Scott, CJ, several guys just appeared in the back of the room so they could watch me see this Easter egg come to life for the first time. And then they all clapped and laughed. So it was very elaborate just to get me.
That's what we do.
So is there any other reason they exist beyond ripping on Marty? Is it, why are they there? Like, what do they exist?
Well, I mean, I was going to say that the whole purpose of Easter eggs is just because, partly it's a way for the team to blow off steam a little bit. Like, Travis will put a picture of himself. What's the name of that Halo 3 level? The one, I know what it was called. Internally, it was Steve Cotton's little test bed with the two capture the flags. But what is it called to the public?
Oh, the map. It's the one with the big radar.
Standoff.
Yeah. Yes.
Right. So on Standoff with the radar dishes there. Sure, there's a picture of like Travis waving. If you go and zoom in on the radar dishes, that's just Travis blowing off steam. But for a lot of the time, it's because not everything can be a big production in terms of the story. So you can put little flyers of lost Jason Jones like on the ground in Voy on the Halo 3. It's just a way for us to have a little bit of a kind of fun connection to the testers, to the game players who are out there playing. Like, we'll hide special weapons around the levels because we want to see what happens if people find this one level, or this one weapon. My absolute favorite Easter egg that we created for the fans is in Halo 2 in Old Mombasa. There's a jumping challenge you can do on the roofs in Old Mombasa to go through, and I'm not sure if anybody ever completed this, but if you do it on Legendary, and there's a special skull that appears, and there's a challenge where you have to face off against wave after wave after wave of sword elites, and we could never complete it. We thought it might actually be literally impossible. But so that heritage, the Vidmaster Challenge, is something that has been at Bungie for years and years and years and years. And we've kind of fallen off the wagon a little bit with the most recent Halo games. There haven't been that many Vidmaster Challenges lately, but I have a feeling we'll be seeing them come back sometime in the future.
Well, I mean, you talked about Easter eggs, and it could be blowing off steam. I think another intention, and I think it's a really noteworthy one, is that it often is because there are so many passionate fans who are going to comb over every inch of the game, and that's amazing. That's awesome, and so then you're sort of driven to do something for those folks that are going to put that extra love and attention to what you're making. So one of my favorite ones is on, was it Myth or Myth 2, the long-awaited the deer hunter one, the explosive deer.
It's Myth 2.
Oh my God, I love that one because it leads you into something that, like, this is so fun, right?
Yeah.
This is awesome, right?
And a lot of the Easter eggs, I mean, let's be honest, they're just mistakes, right? I mean, I think one of fans' favorite Easter eggs is this crazy, all-powerful weapon that they can find in Halo 2.
The Scarab gun.
The Scarab gun, which is a great Easter egg, except that was totally my mistake because I used it like a cheating bastard as a cinematic effect. I just had it floating in the middle of the air to fire off in one shot to get a Scarab beam going across the screen, and I forgot to take it out. So a lot of that stuff is just
It's fairly elaborate to
Well,
get that.
wasn't there a Marine in Halo 1 that was
Yeah, I
just
forgot to
standing?
take him out,
You
too.
forgot to take him out.
No.
You just wanted his voice for one reason, and then everybody got up on top of whatever that was. What level was that?
No, he was one of the Marines in that Pelican going in the initial Pelican run.
that's right.
And in script, I believe, we were very late did we get, like, delete all characters by, like, class of character.
Yeah.
And so I had to go and delete them by name. And that was just old legacy script. So I said, okay, delete the Aussie, delete Scully, delete all these guys. I just forgot to say delete whatever the hell I called that
Perez
guy.
or whatever,
And so there he was, ding, hanging out in the swamp with no weapon.
Yeah, just standing there.
Yeah, just hanging out. Looking for his friends.
Jason and I were talking to someone, I think it was last week, and he brought up at the very end of Halo the Whispering Grunt, right? And Jason was talking about how, what the odds were to get
The crazy grunt in the trench run that's just hanging out?
Yeah, exactly. And what does he say? It's like,
I don't remember. Does anybody remember? There's this grunt that's hanging out saying something. I forget what he says in there.
Halo
but
1?
In Halo 1, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that was...
Gee, something back at the starship, because I have food nipples waiting for me, because...
What is it? Somebody knows.
Yeah.
Working
Big grunty
up a
thirst,
big
that's right.
grunty thirst.
That was just an outtake that you put in
Yes,
from one of my
exactly.
crazy
Yeah.
sleep-deprived sessions, yeah.
Big grunty thirst,
yeah.
which now we have... Aren't there coffee mugs that say satisfy your grunty thirst or something?
Are there really? There should
there
be.
should be, yeah.
Where's Frank? Get on that.
So I think we've got about
shirt store called. That's right.
got about 5 minutes
There was
left.
actually on Halo 3. Joe had some trouble with writing, and one day he did some outtakes that were just perfect, and we put him in, and that was what you were gonna have. We were gonna have in there, and then I don't know if you know this.
Oh,
but
the writer's block grunt?
Yeah.
Oh, he was good. He had some anger issues.
Yeah, but we later on we realized, you know what? That really isn't funny. It's actually
It was kinda
there's some
dark.
mean
That grunt had
darkness
some
going
deep
on. So we
issues.
swapped it out with some funnier stuff.
This story isn't good at all.
Yeah. We cut him. It was appropriate.
Just say this is probably the last Halo panel that we'll do, I guess. Seems
Yeah.
like an appropriate time to shut them down. So what do you guys want to say before we walk out? It's very sad.
Way to bring it down.
I don't know.
You know, I want to say As far as I'm concerned, Halo's never going to die as long as people can still play LAN multiplayer, Halo 1 System Link. So keep going until your Xboxes break. They may be, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, I'm sure Xbox Live will be something different. And there may not be Halo and Xbox Live anymore, but until the last Xbox dies, I'm sure there'll be people out there playing Halo System Link, so keep it up.
I would just say, too, that the fun thing about actually being part of something from the beginning and seeing it take on a life of its own and seeing how the fans have responded over the years, I talked to Jason about, wow, we really caught lightning in a bottle here. What are the odds that we can ever do this again? And he goes, yeah, slim to none. But we're sure as hell going to try. So we have a bunch of people back at Bungie, and our goal is to do this again. So be brave. Stay tuned. We got more really cool stuff on the way. So.
And I think we actually have a bunch of Bungie people in the audience. I see Max hanging out there in the background. Max is still Bungie folk.
Max!
If you're a Bungie person here in the audience, stand on up. Come on, D. Miller, where are you? Anybody? Yeah.
Dan Miller's out there.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I don't really know what to say. I think we've said goodbye to Halo on many different occasions, but goodbye Halo. Yeah, but I mean, seriously, I mean, it lives on, and I think the thing that makes it strong is everybody out here. I mean, we never would have imagined that thousands, millions of people wanted to play our game or listen to our story or listen to our music, and I think we learned many years ago, not like months ago, 5 years ago, that it wasn't really ours anymore. I mean, it belonged to all of you guys. So it hasn't been too hard to say goodbye because it has a home. It has people that care about it, and those people are all of you. So keep loving it.
Yeah, that's the thing that I was going to mention was, there's that classic question of, if a tree falls in the woods, does anybody hear it? Did it happen? Blah, 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 whatever. And you can talk about, like, what was the response. People ask me, like, what was the response to, what is it like when somebody talks to you about, like, Halo? And it's actually it's the coolest. I think it's really, really cool, not in a way of just stoking the ego, but in a way that you're really touched by the appreciation that, folks coming here to hear a jackass like me say something about creating level art. You have to be in awe of the fact that it's because, we really worked hard and we got, we hit some lightning in the bottle moments. We also had some things which I think were well planned out and were smart decisions, but seeing the appreciation, right? Seeing all the, seeing the footage of LAN parties, seeing how people love it, bumping into somebody at an airport who sees your Bungie bag and says, like, I just want to tell you that I play it with my kids and they love it and blah, blah, blah. And
I cannot tell you how many airport security lines I've gotten through faster because I have a Bungie backpack.
Yes. and I mean, I think that's...
I always just get searched.
Yeah.
Because they want to find the demo disc in your backpack.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
For a while, I actually carried around copies of our games in my backpack to give out to TSA people. Very nice. Seriously.
But I mean, that's the coolest thing is I think the appreciation for the work that you folks have always exhibited, and that's really powerful.
Yeah.
And so what I would like to say is just thank you to all of you folks.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think that's a pretty good note to end on. I want to thank you guys for coming out. Thanks for supporting this team. Thanks for celebrating the games they make. It's great to see you guys all lined up and energetic and enthusiastic to hear them speak. Hopefully you enjoyed the panel. They may be sticking around and signing. I'm not sure. Maybe I just put them on the spot. Allison?
I want to say that everybody, I would love for you guys to give a round of applause to Bungie here, not here, past, present. Thank you so much for everything you've done for everyone.
This is just going to make Marty more powerful and more evil.
It feeds his soul. It feeds his soul. And I was just texting with Frank, who got stuck behind a car accident, but he says you're on for the mug.
I'm on for the what?
The mug.
The mug.
Satisfy your grunty
Excellent,
thirst.
Frank.
He says, deal.
All right.
It's on.
Bam.
So I'm hoping that you guys will stick around and do signing right over here. Let's
Okay.
keep it
Yeah.
orderly. Let's keep it clean.
Keep it
Thank
clean.
you.
Keep it clean.
Yeah.
See you, Starside.
See what you did there.
I see what